This video is on the difference between sociology and psychology. Let's start out by describing in a very simple way the difference. In sociology, the focus is always going to be on the group. In psychology, the focus is going to be on the individual. So in looking at a topic, sociologists are always going to get back to the group and talk about the group, whereas psychologists are going to talk about the individual. Now remember, a group is made up of two or more people. So let's take the topic of murder. If psychologists were looking at murder, they might possibly ask questions about the individual who committed the murder. Say, for instance, a man killed his wife. Psychologists might ask, what motivated this male to kill his wife? Was he jealous? Did he think she was seeing another man, and in a fit of rage of jealousy, he killed her? Had he been drinking at the time that he committed the act? What was it that was going on with this individual that led this male to commit this crime? Sociologists, on the other hand, would start looking at the group. And here's a group we can look at. Men. Who's more likely to commit murder, men or women? Men. Who's more likely to kill their spouse? Males killing their wives or wives killing their husbands? Men are much more likely to kill their wives than are wives to kill their husbands. So sociologists, in looking at murder, might ask, why is it that men commit more murder? What's going on here? And we would start asking various questions about how society raises boys, how men are raised, and does that have any impact on men being more violent? For instance, we could ask, we raise boys to suppress emotions. Does this have an impact on their behavior? There's an old saying, big boys don't cry. Big boys are tough, men are tough. Does this cause stress to build up because men hold in emotions? They don't express fear or anger or indecision because they're not supposed to. And does this buildup of stress maybe at times explode in violent behavior? These are the kinds of questions that sociologists might ask. We also might ask, are there other factors that might contribute to males committing more murders? And one of them might have something to do with guns. For instance, men are much more likely to be around guns, to own guns, to have guns, and be familiar with shooting and handling weapons than are females. Maybe that has something to do with it. And we can take the topic of guns one step further. For instance, when we look at murder rates, we find that murder rates vary from country to country. Some countries have very high murder rates. Some countries have very low murder rates. And we might ask ourselves why. And one of the things that comes out, according to many sociologists, are guns. For instance, the United States has a higher murder rate than most industrialized countries. In other words, given our size, we end up killing more people than many other industrialized countries. Why? Now, there are many reasons, but one of them might be guns. How many guns are there in private hands in American society? Have any idea? Look it up. I bet you'll be surprised to find out how many guns are in private hands in American society. The number is quite high. And therefore, sociologists, in looking at murder rates in American society and comparing our society to other societies, might say, do guns have anything to do with it? And because in this society, if you look up that number about guns, you'll find that there are a lot more guns in private hands than I think any of you suspected was the case. Now, with this in mind, I need to point out something. Some people might look at murder and the topic of males committing more murder and say it's something in the testosterone or the genetics or the biology. Sociologists usually reject these arguments because we feel, one, that's not proven that there's anything in the genetics of male that makes a man more likely to kill another human being. Also, we point out this fact. If genetics cause men to be violent, to commit murders, then we should find a consistent pattern across all societies. In other words, Canadian men should kill as often as American men, as often as Mexican men, as often as German or Japanese males, because there's a genetic factor determining it, if that was true, but it's not. And this is what sociologists say. They say if genetics was determining males being violent or committing murder, then we should find a similar pattern across all societies, but we don't. We find that murder rates vary dramatically from one society to the other. Males in some societies are much more likely to commit murder and be violent than men are in other societies. Therefore, we discount genetics as a cause of violent behavior. I needed to point that out. So again, let's summarize this. Sociology focuses on the group. Psychology focuses on the individual. And looking at the topic of murder, psychologists would look at why the individual committed the murder. Sociologists, on the other hand, would ask questions about the group. Why do men commit more murders? Why are more murders committed in some societies and less murders committed in other societies? And this would be one simple way of looking at how sociology and psychology would differ in the study of violent behavior, or in this case, murder.